Before we begin, this video is sponsored by Sleeve Chief. You can find good quality accessories to make your deck and gear look good. Get card protector sleeves with artworks of all your favorite archetypes and cards for the main and extra deck. There's extraordinary border sleeves, and they've got you covered with deck boxes, playmats, and dice as well. Head on over to Sleeve Chief's website through my affiliate link in the description box below and use my code SHADOW at checkout to get 5% off your entire order. Let's begin. Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 budget decks you can pick up if you're on a budget, if you're just trying to pick up a deck and not spend a ton of money and also have a deck that's actually meta viable. Some of these ones are like the top contenders right now, so yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. As the first deck, I wanted to discuss Mathmech. So Mathmech has pretty much been doing the exact same thing this entire time. It got better with Circular, and then with Heat Soul you're able to draw into cards and just have consistency and draw into your hand traps and all of that. But then it fell off because Bystios entered into the meta, and like if you're playing Mathmech, you just did not have a good time at that point in time, so just people stopped playing Mathmech. But now the deck is useful again because we're in a very diverse meta, so you can really capitalize on playing a different strategy or like a contender that might not be as great like at the top, but if you're piloting well and just amassing your resources, you can still be rewarded and achieve good results at events. So basically with Mathmech, it just goes for like 1 to 2 card combos, so you have a bunch of space to play hand traps as well. Usually hand traps is what Mathmech players go for because you're able to utilize Small World in the deck for consistency. You have also Pot of Desires for consistency, and your combos just end you on like maybe Heat Soul to draw into things. But the most important part is that you end on the Trap, which is actually like one of the most expensive cards in the deck, and it's only around $10 per copy, so you're not spending a lot of money for this deck. But the Trap card of course started to go up in price because it's good. It didn't have any reprints, and what it does is it summons an Xyz, which is also a negate, during the turn that it's summoned, usually because of the materials. So you get disrupted and you just lose because they have too many hand traps and too much advantage at that point, and you just get OTK'd because Mathmech is able to OTK very easily with Update Jammer into Access Code. And Access Code is the other like expensive card, but it's Access Code. Like you probably need 2, which again is a bit more expensive because we are in that kind of meta and because it's also very useful to have in this particular deck. But what I wanted to say is it's just a staple for the extra deck, so you maybe already have Access Code on hand and then you just need to spend some money for the actual core, which is not expensive at all. So I think it's an interesting deck. It just has a bit of everything, you know, you're going for your combos, you have hand traps, you're able to OTK easily, and just, yeah, also very, very cheap to pick up, obviously. Then I wanted to, of course, talk about Sprite. Sprite, immediately people are gonna think, well, Sprite Blue is expensive. It is more expensive than the rest of the deck, but every single other thing in the deck is cheap, so I would still classify this as an inexpensive deck. Obviously, like the deck itself, it struggled a bit after Elf got banned because people weren't very like certain what kind of routes to take, what engines to pair together with the deck, but now things started to solidify themselves sort of. The Melfi version seems like the best one, and it's very cheap to invest into that engine, which provides you with either a negate or a bounce, whatever you want, and just additional bodies. People started to include Gamma in the deck, which is also a cheap hand trap and is also an extender together with Emergency Teleport, so you're able to establish a board that just has enough for you to stop the opponent, to maybe throw some hand traps at them as well, and then just when play passes back to you, you have enough resources to just continue and maybe even get an OTK because there's OTK lines in the deck as well. It requires a skillful pilot, but it has enough space for your tech cards, tech slots, I should say, to really be dedicated to the meta that you're trying to face. Is something that Sprite always like shown in, being able to adjust to the meta with its tech slots. So that's really important right now because you're trying to cover as many matchups as possible, and it has good matchups across the board. Now the deck can play Pot of Prosperity. Pot of Prosperity of course helps with consistency, with drawing into your going second cards and all of that, but if you cannot purchase it immediately, it's still not that bad. You can still run Sprite and just add on to it as you go. You don't need to purchase everything at once because Pot of Prosperity overall is a good card to just have and own, so you probably are going to invest into it later down the line. So you can just go slowly and invest into however many copies of the card you want, or just start with the deck without it and then decide what you want to do. So I think it's a very good pick right now, and also like you're able to play so many different versions. So if you're into testing different things when it comes to one deck and like just really getting good with it, that's also really cool. You can invest in the adventure stuff, which is a bit more expensive, but it's also a version that can be played. So whatever you want, basically. The third deck, Dark World, received support in the structure deck, and because the structure deck was released and pretty much everything was reprinted in there, it's a very, very cheap deck to acquire and just have. There's a couple like staples you have to invest in the extra deck. Maybe like Muckcracker is like one of more expensive cards in the deck, and it's not that expensive by itself. So you're investing into those things, but like the core itself, everything is insanely cheap, and the deck might not be among like the strongest on this list, but I still wanted to talk about it. It's able to do the hand loop, which that's like probably one of the strongest things about it, and also the fact that it's just able to spam out bodies and just go into like I said, you know, generic link plays like End on Appaloosa and things like that, go into Saryuja to draw additional cards. It draws a ton, so it's able to draw into its key pieces and also into cards like Lava Golem, which is a really strong card in this current meta. And also the going second is not that bad because dangers that you're able to pair up together with the deck and are also cheap act as going second cards in a way if they get sniped or they draw into your going second cards. And with you, like just like I said before, spamming out a ton of bodies, you're like forcing your opponent to like interact with those things, and it's easier to go second that way and just put up the Dark World bodies, which are quite big by themselves, and hand loop the opponent through like the process and just break apart the board. Then you have the Grafa fusion, so the support that the deck received, which is really nice, and just it's a bit of an annoying deck to go up against, but it seems interesting and it seems fairly strong, and I did want to mention it today. So the next deck that obviously had to find its way to this list is Despia. With Maze of Memories and the reprints, a very important reprint from that set was Guardian Chimera. And Guardian Chimera was always a very necessary card in Despia, but it was one of the most expensive ones because the actual like branded Despia side of things was cheap. Like the deck received the reprints it had to receive for the cards to go down in price, and the support and everything was printed in a structure deck. So Despia wasn't hard to acquire. Chimera was just expensive and you had to play it. And right now with the Maze of Memories reprint, it's immediately even more accessible. And I've of course wanted to talk about it also because it's one of the top decks right now. However, it does feel like it sort of falls off quite quickly as it enters the meta, unless it really adjusts in some way, and it might happen. But like as soon as people start to react to branded being in a meta, they can use very generic cards like Ash that just hurts the deck, or very impactful cards like D-Barrier, and just when people start to prepare too much for it, it's immediately much harder to play such a deck. So it might seem like it's slowly falling off, but it's still very strong in itself. It's able to put up boards with different types of disruption that are just so powerful and so hard to deal with, especially with the support from Photon Hypernova. And also if your board gets broken and the opponent can deal with it, they pretty much almost need to OTK, because if they don't, your Mirror Jade is probably triggering. If they didn't deal with it, if they did, cool, but they would have had to like waste a ton of cards to do that, I think. So if they dealt with it, cool. If they didn't, Mirror Jade is popping their monsters in the end phase. So like you have to OTK, or you have to establish something that prevents the Mirror Jade, which is hard to achieve and like rids you of your resources. So as soon as you pass it back to the branded player, they probably have enough to just completely stop you or OTK you. So we need to talk about the Gimmick Puppet lock as well. It's here, it's annoying, it's in probably every single player's side deck, so that's why this Despia is also very strong. The Gimmick Puppet itself is not cheap because it didn't receive any reprints as far as I know, so I guess that's a bit of a more expensive card to acquire. But other than that, Despia is also one of those decks that really rewards good gameplays if you just strive to be good. I think Despia is a deck that can teach you a lot if you truly master it. So yeah, moving on to the last deck, I wanted to mention Rika, and the deck was already mentioned in one of my videos, like I think 2 videos back I talked about underrated decks. So I won't repeat myself, but I quickly wanted to go over some things again, because Rika is also a very budget-friendly deck to acquire with the reprints, again from the set Maze of Memories. So Before that, some cards weren't that cheap, so right now with the deck being a powerful contender and also a cheap one, more people may want to acquire it, which is fair because, like I said, the deck is strong. The disruptions it puts up are very cool because they are so diverse. So whatever your opponent sides in against you, they would have to really decide what they're trying to like target to eliminate with the side cards, and if they do, they still need to deal with your other things because you have the field spell attributing their stuff, you have the trap card, you have monsters with negates, you have a monster negate in the graveyard more than likely, so there's so many things for your opponent to deal with. And also those kinds of boards are achievable through 1-card combos, which are also hard to disrupt because if you're doing a 1-card combo, you're drawing 4 additional cards, so you have a ton of things probably to play through stuff. So there's that. And like I said, on top of that, you have hand traps as well because you have a ton of space. So you can really adjust to the meta. For example, Mystic Mine and Rivalry were played in this deck before. Right now, Rivalry is probably not a bad choice, but still not among the greatest ones, and Mystic Mine is banned. But you still have a ton of options to play alongside your engine, and just, I think it's a very, very nice deck. Also one of those ones that requires a good player just to really decide what kind of plays they want to go for, because your boards are achievable through a minimum amount of cards. So if you're trying to play around stuff like Nibiru, if you're just trying to be safe and hold your resources, you can also go for plays like that if your hand allows you. And we do need to mention the Aromatherapy Jasmine. It only have 1 printing, so it's not as cheap as you would want an extra deck monster to be, and you play 2 copies. So that's something you have to invest into, but other than that, everything is cheap. Alright, so that's pretty much it. I think all of those decks are really nice, except maybe Dark World. I'm not a fan of it, but that's just me being biased. Like, I think they are strong, and I think they're good contenders, and it's just really cool to see that there are many budget options out there. These 5 ones are not the only options for you. There's a ton of other things, and yeah, let me know what you're running in this format, and if you're getting ready for the 250th YCS. And of course, like the video if you liked it, sub, make sure to check out all the social media, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!